Hi everybody, my name is Ruth Dube and you are listening to the Influence by Ikasi Creative. Sadly, my friends, this is the last podcast session that I will be hosting and leading. I am going to be handing over to someone very special that I will introduce you to in this episode, and their name is Jude Hunt. Jude.
Hi Ruth.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well.
Good.
My name is Jude, and as Ruth said, I will be taking over the podcast from here on with my partner Courtney. You've seen us. We are the new social media interns, and Ruth has been inducting us for the past 3 weeks. Yeah. They had the whole world on their shoulders, and now we get to do it together.
Delegating, finally.
Yes.
So, Jude, I know I got you the job, but why did you take this job? Why are you working with Ikasi?
Yes, we did plan this podcast for before I got the job.
Exactly.
Note.
No, listen, this is way before.
Yeah, but I think that I didn't really know the reach of Ikasi until I started working, until learning from Lamis and Nadi and in office. But as soon as I realized that we were working within specific areas that are affected still by apartheid, the regime and the legacy it left behind, and bridging gaps of skill development and creativity, this is very much in alignment with I guess what it makes me passionate as a person. I don't think that from a young age I thought I could go and be creative, which we'll get into. Started with law first and came back to this side. So I think at Ikasi really, it's what I'm passionate about. And also storytelling is, I think, my purpose in life.
Why did you think you couldn't tell stories? What was that? Why was there a block with you in terms of?
I think that as a person who has gone through many transitions in life, but also with family and divorced parents, etc. There was also just the reality of my transness. I didn't feel like I was in a space that I could be freely open about who I knew I was. It took me a long time to even realize or get in touch with my own body and recognize my own needs. And I think that a large part of my storytelling, therefore, was focused on other people's stories. And it still is to a part. But I struggled so much because I didn't know how to tell my own story from the beginning. And I needed to get there first, really. Yeah. I think I just had a lot of blocks because I believed and thought things differently in a unique way. People would just call me unique. They were probably you're crazy and a little bit weird. You're probably on the spectrum, but anyways. Yeah.
That's unique.
It is unique.
Yeah.
Fully, but I think I only really understood that recently.
How do you think being trans affects your storytelling or affects the way that you tell stories for other people?
That, what I just said comes into it is I know what it kind of, obviously I'm a white person, so there's different layers to being silenced and not having a safe space to be yourself. But from the perspective of my body and my identity, I think I know what it feels like to kind of just always have to not do that. And you're constantly switched on in the sense of you're masking to a point of okay, this is what is acceptable in this space, and this is what this is what's gonna get me friends. That's what leads me to do storytelling in the trans community, where the stories are led by individuals, and I merely am the platform. And again, also I guess the editing and situations like that, but the story comes from them. It's very driven by the storytellers themselves. I purely just want to give people that space.
And so you do that through your photography. and
Yes,
through
I do.
documenting people's stories as like a
Yes.
videographer.
Yes.
How do you reconcile doing that independently and kind of like employment and trying to survive?
That is an interesting question, especially because I've only really started picking up in my freelance now, in terms of it being a regular, like I'm regularly booked. I'm also getting payments in, but it started really, I would just offer people like, I can be the documenter for your community dialogue. And it started within trans and gender diverse healthcare spaces and activism spaces. And because I'm also a writer, it was like my role was to document and also research and also write the source book for hospitals, government and private, basically educating on gender affirming healthcare and also kind of outlining why we need to, as all of these institutions band together and make it a very important part of even learning how to become a doctor, like studying, becoming a nurse, it needs to be a part of. Unfortunately, that project was cut because of USAID cuts. So immediately, it was like we had even gone to ILGA. I attended ILGA.
What is ILGA?
It is the International Lesbian and Gays Association. It's like a big, broad band of people.
Yeah.
But it's activists in the trans and queer spaces.
Yeah.
They come to convene and present their findings it's like a annual meeting. I was invited and like I went with Triangle Project and they did it. I mean, they introduced the source book and shortly after that the USAID cut.
Yeah.
And then that project is undone and now people being retrenched from those spaces. So as a freelancer in that space, I can see how that affects people, those who had permanent jobs within those spaces.
Yeah.
But then also now I don't have that avenue of like where everyone convenes together to come as a community. So over the past few months, been working with an activist who works in the Desmond Tutu Health Institute.
Yes.
And she is incredible. We've been working on her documentary. Again, no funding, on time schedules that are stressful. I mean, she is currently up in a shelter in Greenpoint. It's a thing of that is my passion driving. And I started with like the volunteering, but at a point it was like people needed, they said to me, you should be hired, like you should be charging people. And then like Triangle, for example, was one organization who said this to me, and then they hired me again for something specific, which is a series that again has been slowed down by USAID cuts. Being a freelancer in the space of queer activism, and now it's branched into the drag performance space, it's definitely interesting because you know, there's spaces where people have money, and then there's spaces where people don't, and like anything that you can give or anything that they can get is like gold. As a photographer, like I do observe a lot. The major thing that I've seen really is like, as a freelancer, to charge where you know there's money. Also, as a freelancer, you're not presented by like
An agency.
Yeah. So people can kind of just
throw you around,
pay you late. But like what I noted was like documenting and photographing for like the non-profit orgs, like the gender affirming healthcare, those spaces that are like non-profit purely. Obviously, like the payments situation was difficult, and especially amidst the USAID. I keep on bringing it up and I will keep on speaking about it. Those cuts have put us in a position like as a community, and those spaces were the only safe space for us. Honestly, freelancing and employment, like it has to come from a place of you want to do the work as well. And like you have to also start at a point where you're volunteering
first,
which is it's also like like that's hard to think about.
Yeah, and
like,
hard to ask of people as well.
It is, especially
Yeah.
also like those, not everyone goes to like tertiary education.
Exactly.
And you don't need to be a creative in film or media at all. But, you know, imagine like you just come from studying and then you get these qualifications and like you have to start from like not
The
earning
bottom.
anything.
Yeah.
Like people are jolted by that. They're upset by that. And like, honestly, it is frustrating. It takes time. You need to be passionate about what you're doing.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
For sure.
Yeah. I don't think it's the kind of game that you can play for fun, being in like the film industry. And I don't even know. I think like even personally, I would say I'm in the film industry in a very independent or personal capacity. I don't necessarily believe in big conglomerate sets just because I think there's not necessarily always artistic integrity, and it doesn't always mean that the stories are going to be well told just because they're produced with a lot of money. So I think it is very important to keep that distinction between like it is okay to be a filmmaker with very little resources and to still tell stories.
Absolutely.
Instead of letting other people tell those stories for you, which is what is done a lot of the time by like Netflix and
Absolutely. I mean, even like that just relates to what you asked, like why did you feel you couldn't tell stories? It's because also like mainstream media tells you like this is the only story that can be told sometimes, or this is the only way it can be done, or it needs this camera to shoot this, or it needs, you can't shoot from your phone, you can't
so many
editing.
restrictions.
There's so many restrictions, and also just like what, like I guess like standards that aren't changing much from the West. And that's why it's also important for like the global South storytellers to come up and to like use all mediums.
Exactly. I think it's also, like you said, all mediums, super important not to just rely on big conglomerate, just movies and series. It's also really important to even the little YouTube series that have been made and people do like really like sort of guerrilla podcasts and like street interviews. I still think that's all very valuable media in terms of South African like preserving what we can do storytelling wise instead of just allowing our narratives to be taken away from us. I think it's also very important for us to then like support local and
absolutely that's the only way we can build ourselves. Because I think like focusing too much on international and like also the narrative of like we're only going to make it if it gets to international.
Yeah, for sure.
Like it's so sad because also those structures are set up to make like the global, like okay, let's specifically Africa. Like there's so much that Africa depends on the West for, and it's literally just it's brought in by the West. It's not like we're like we're like we don't have anything. You know, it's like, almost like a forced weird manipulative hierarchical,
like you need us to make stories when in reality we don't.
I mean, I think of even local artists who like they've done, and local writers, like local poets, like this is also like a cross, like media is also a cross thing, but they've taken and toured like internationally, and that seems to be more of
an
where
acclaim.
their acclaim and also their activity is mainly there. And like it's brilliant to get that reach, it is. But I think it's sad to sometimes see the effort that they put in there and not here. And it's not that they don't put in effort here. It's more just like, I think that they don't get the reach that they need here.
I think we also have indoctrinated ourselves. We've Americanized ourselves to the point where we all think it's so important to appeal to an American audience, even if it means changing some of the main facets of our stories or the way that we interact with people in them. It's this very tiring, I call it like the Netflix effect, where people just Netflixify everything. Literally. Even the stories that we tell is like primed for eight episodes, 5 seasons, like more of the same. I think it's just become a very tiring, like,
it's like a template now at this point as well. It's like you just keep watching like the same thing
Exactly.
over and over.
Like, can we talk about how all of the stories about black women in South Africa, they're always like running
and it was
like
crime
fighting
related.
people. Yeah, there's always some gang that's going on and they need to shoot people and then they're stressed out and they can never just like chill. It's never just like, you know what, I'm just gonna go to the park today. They go to the park and then bam, someone's trying to shoot
Or
them,
like,
and then like,
I don't know. I'm gonna tell Fatal Seduction.
Yeah.
I know I brought it up to you before, but
what is that on Netflix? South
no,
Africa?
Showmax. Oh, my
God.
gosh, no! That season, those series are crazy.
Yeah.
Again, it's like following a black professor. I think she's a law professor at UCT.
Why are they doing this to her?
And it's literally set at the institution. Like
Yeah.
they're not even hiding the logo. Nothing.
That's
It's
crazy.
Set in, and like eventually, like she kind of like, I don't know, she cheats on her husband with one of her students who she doesn't know is her student at the time.
Okay.
Then he shows up in class. But then it's like this whole undercover crime thing. Like again, and it spirals, and it's just like she couldn't be that law lecturer who, like, I don't know, she basically got so acclaimed throughout her life. She did the studying, all of that. And she couldn't be, she was in an unhappy marriage at the time.
Yeah.
But like she couldn't just be human for a second and like, oh, I messed up and I cheated.
Yeah.
And now I can go past this. Like that boy was just like following her and it was a revenge theme. Like you should watch it.
Okay, maybe I should. I've been trying to get more into South African shows and series. I think it's very important if we're going to try and measure the gap in the market to actually see what we have going on first, which is also like, I started Savage Beauty and that's kind of slay. Have you seen it on Netflix?
I've tried it.
It kind of gripped me. I was like, okay, girl,
I'll try it again.
Get it. Yeah.
I'll try it again.
I think you should.
Okay.
I was going to talk about one of the shows, but then I realized I worked on it and I'm like, I don't know if I'm allowed to speak negatively on things that
NDA
I've worked
things.
on. Yeah, but I do think, again, just lots of crime central around South African and African women. It can be very tiring. It's almost like, why do they always want to see us traumatized? You can never have like a Hallmark Christmas movie.
No.
We do have, what is it? How to Ruin Christmas, the movie? Those, like, it's kind of cute. I'm not going to lie.
Okay.
Yeah, like, it's like a fun little Christmas movie. Yeah.
Okay.
It's like Hallmark vibes.
Okay, I've not watched this movie. I'll go
think you
seek this
should.
out. Yes.
It's low-key cute. They have like a whole franchise. It's like How to Ruin Christmas, the movie, How to Ruin Thanksgiving,
I love
New
that.
Year's, some stuff. Yeah, it's
That's
great.
very anti-West.
Yeah, yes, exactly. There are some not independent, but there are some stories being told independent of the usual narrative that South Africa is just like a crime-ridden country, which unfortunately we do have a lot of crime. But that's not the only thing that we have.
It's also the same thing with like queer people. Like they're not always dying. They're not always fighting for their lives.
Yeah.
They don't always have AIDS.
Yeah, exactly.
But like in every mainstream film, what do they have?
AIDS.
Yeah.
It's... And also it's very stigmatized to have that. Like it's a very unfortunate disease and it doesn't discriminate. It's like being like, oh, that's gross, you have cancer. Like
no. There's so much that could be said actually, but like that's a different topic.
But basically do not discriminate based on people's health
absolutely
statuses.
Never.
That's really not
that's
necessary.
Very 1979.
Yeah, and like we're very much past that right now. So thank you. That's just a public social amount. So what? Public service announcement, PSA.
Yes, PSA.
Yeah. Don't discriminate based on people's health statuses. We can put like a tring. How are you feeling about not just the current state of the world, but like,
wow.
How are you feeling about needing to tell stories in this state? Because I'm like, what stories should we be telling? Should we be very serious and be making documentaries? Like, what is the value in still having other things to say?
I think I am a very like documentary focused person. I think I love documentaries. I love slow cinema and incorporating that into documentary. I will say though that like there's so many different styles of documentary like making. You know, you could make it a creative documentary in the sense of like, okay, like all of the stuff that's happening wouldn't happen in reality, but it's kind of a metaphor in some way. Fiction writing is the truth, but it's just, it's about telling it in a, like the best way as a lie, you know?
Okay.
Just to paint it like, okay, like so it kind of goes over everyone's heads in the sense of like, this isn't me, it's a different story. But like, it's hitting your subconscious. In every film or media situation, I think especially right now, it should be driving towards telling the truth, but also in a creative way, so that it's not monotonous. It's not another template. It's not another controlled like mainstream thing. Because also I think we need to get rid of mainstream.
Very much.
And I think like currently in the world, sure, like there's a lot to say. I do believe strongly that media industries, film industries, like we need to be like there on the ground. Not only just like making stories, but aid. Like we need to be giving aid. We need to be thinking about ways that we can bring people's stories to light in a way that they also want and that like they consent with is also a big thing. So yeah, I think that also it's not also about film. It's about books. It's about poetry. It's about designing, drawing, art. Like there's a lot of multimedia ways that you could incorporate into making a documentary. Someone I want to invite on this podcast, if you're watching, Kopano Mashike. She is the creator of City of Shacks project. And that, for example, is like, it's a documentary in itself, but it's a fundraiser. It is also, it's an initiative. It's a movement. It's part of the occupation movement. And in the way that Kopano did that was just very admirable, because that showed me like documentary is not only on screen.
It's in real life.
It's in real life, and it's also in connecting with community and bringing community from all classes, all backgrounds to have like a common aim. Like for example, we did the Christmas fundraising lunch and we organized, well, Kopano, not we, I'm not part of the project, but I just went there to help. And that's the thing, it was like a free call for help, like who's coming? And I thought it was so beautiful and it really was so moving. And this is for Sissy Ghoul House, which is the otherwise known or previously known as the Old Woodstock Hospital. And the city of Cape Town has kind of put it up for auction. You know, it's the part of the occupation movement. Check it out. I'm not going to go into it here on this podcast, but the documentary style of City of Shacks and that project is just very much an example of what I think we should be doing in the current state of the world as storytellers. And I mean, again, City of Shacks goes on radio talks. They just do a lot, and it's multimedia, and I think that's
the most important.
So important.
I also agree. That was really beautiful. That documentary isn't just on screens, it is in real life, and it's about connection, and it's about perseverance of the people.
Always.
Well, thank you so much, Jude, for having this conversation with me. I'm very excited to see what you do with the podcast going forward, and hopefully I can also be a guest.
Of course you will be
at some point.
A star guest.
I get invited.
VIP guest.
But I'm very excited to see where you go with this, and I'm really, really, really proud of you. Thank you for taking care of my baby in the future.
I will take care of it.
Thank you.
And you will always be welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of The Influence. My name is Ruth Dube. Goodbye. It's my last time you'll see me on this screen. Probably not the last time, but last time for now. And thank you very much, Jude, for joining us.
Thank you for joining us. Yay. You will see me on the next podcast. We will be hosting a very important guest too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.